All right, welcome to Be Your Own Advocate. My aunt Isabel and I are here.
Great.
We're focused on bringing tools to you to help you advocate in your life in many different ways. And today, I wanted to bring on a special guest named Ceadda. I don't even know his last name. He's a good friend, a new friend, and someone that I think is really unique in his perspective and lifestyle. And I really wanted to bring him on and talk about specifically how nature heals
Mm.
and talk about his experience of facing chronic issues in his body and how nature's played a role in his healing process, and then see where it goes from there. So, welcome, Ceadda.
Beautiful
How you doing,
behind
Isaiah?
you. It looks so nice.
Uh,
Nature, we're talking about nature. You have this great nature picture behind you of the outside and looks nice.
Thank you. This is actually my first time on a Zoom, so I kind of just like put this laptop facing my backyard in Malibu. I didn't really
Beautiful,
know
man.
where else to sit.
It's
Great.
perfect.
Thank you.
Well, I would love to just start out talking about your experience. I feel like you embody, a wisdom around nature and an immersion process. Like you're bringing yourself into nature, ocean, river, forest all the time. And that's one of your main focuses, which I think is amazing and really important to do on a lot of levels in our current lifestyle, our current way of living. We need to reconnect with nature. So I'm just curious, anything you want to share about your process of nature and how it's played a role in your healing process, help you with your spine, with your life, with your body, anything that comes up there to begin.
Yeah, when I was young, I was born on this reef in actually Moss Beach, California, and my father, who I'll tell you about in a sec, he had this land, and my mom had a horse in our front yard. And the second day I was born, my mom brought me down to this reef. We were right on it. We had a little pathway that went to it from the cliff we were on, and she dipped me in the ocean like when I was a little infant, and I was just so drawn to go down to that reef as I started growing and just learning how to swim in those tide pools and always seeing very, very magical, beautiful things that it's hard to explain to people unless you see it all the time. Um, and then my dad left. He left my mom. We had to leave this magical property. My mom was a single mom, a waitress at that point. She had to and I kind of went down a path of sort of running around with bad boys and growing into more of a little troublemaker in our little neighborhood in Half Moon Bay. And I was always wild and free, but I wasn't so focused on nature like when I was in my first beginnings of my life. And every time I would have sort of family, drama. I had a sister who was bipolar and she got on drugs really early, and my mom was a little crazy. And there was always this stuff I would like escape by myself, and I would go down to the ocean or into the redwood mountains behind us, and uh, I remember starting very young. I used to always have these experiences that would make me feel better when I was sad. I would have these I would be really like conflicted and sad and upset inside from drama at the house or whatever, and all of a sudden a buck would show up or a hawk would land or a dolphin would jump. And I think being on the coast of Northern California, you're very privileged to be able to have access to that stuff, but it doesn't mean you're privileged financially. Like a lot of people think, oh, you were lucky to be able to live in nature. I wasn't able to grow up there, but a lot of people who live in these areas also had a lot of trauma and weren't wealthy, and there's a lot of blue collar, families and stuff. So it's more, I think, about the individual, what you're drawn to. So anyway, these positive experiences started building up, and I just realized as I even got into my teens, I was like, you know what? Like nature is like healing. Like it just is always there for me. No matter what's going on in my life, I would just have these magical experiences. So I think that taught me and solidified for me at a very young age that like there was some bigger power that I can't explain that was always there for me, kind of cradling me. Um, and since that realization, I've just been hooked ever since. So
Love that, man.
yeah,
Yeah, it feels like today's lifestyle is busier than ever. We're more overwhelmed than ever. We're stressed. We're carrying stress we don't even realize we're carrying, most people,
yeah, yeah,
And so having that electromagnetic, emotional, like the reset of just being in a slow, natural rhythm, a biofield, like we can bring the science in, but we all know how we feel when we go to the beach for the day. We know
yeah,
how we feel in the forest. We know how we feel when we jump in a river. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
like
the science part of it's interesting. Of course, I'm always curious to hear about that. And my good friend is Paul Saladino, so he's obsessed with looking at data and all that stuff. But we've had many conversations where I just kind of laugh at him, and I'm like, I don't care what the data says. Like,
yeah,
I just go off of what I feel, and there is no comparison to how I feel when I'm with vast open spaces, whether it be the horizon of the ocean or a horizon of mountains or the horizon of a forest, compared to being sort of in a urbanized concrete area. I would almost dare to say almost panicky. Like my anxiety, like everything just starts getting a little bit, uh, cortisol. Everything just goes up, and then when I'm in these areas that, like I was just mentioning, I feel just like
yeah,
godly.
yes,
Yeah.
connected.
Hmm.
Yeah. So the data for me, I'm just like, I see all these biohackers coming out with all. I'm sort of anti biohacking, as I talked to you about in person,
Yeah,
because I feel like they don't ever mention Mother Nature in the wild, and it's like all the things that they're trying to do in replica, you
yes,
can get from simply spending time connecting, particularly by yourself, in more wild spaces.
yeah. Like if you're in Norway and it's 23 hours of dark, yeah, get a red light. That makes sense. But if you have the sun available, you don't need a red light machine, right? You
A
don't,
thousand percent, I agree.
you
And
know,
sometimes even Isaiah, I lived in Iceland for many seasons, many winters. I chose to live in the Arctic Circle for
yeah,
many different winters, and I would, as you can see right now, I have a very olive skin tone. I have blue eyes, but very dark skin. And I was pale white because I would look at it like seasons. When I was there, I didn't even recognize myself. I was so white. And because there was not much sun. But during the 3 or 4 hours there was sun, I'd go out whenever there was sun and I'd sit in it for a half hour. But would I utilize that season? So I'd walk around barefoot in the snow. I'd go naked in the ice river. I would go and put on lots of wool and freeze and go out and lose myself in the wild of Iceland. But that season wasn't really so much sun for me. It was more like getting what was available, which was this northern rugged beauty. And then when I'm in the summer, whether it's in Malibu or the Polynesia or whatever, I'm all black almost from the sun I'm in. So I really take in wherever I am in that season, if that makes sense.
mhm, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that environmental response, like I feel like yeah, just what you're saying makes a lot of sense, like let's not try, it's like trying to standardize a vitamin versus taking a whole food, it's like,
Exactly.
it's fine. There's a purpose for it. It's
There could be a
targeted.
purpose for it. Yeah. It's just
It
like
could
that's like
be.
yeah,
Yeah.
like biohacking to me is like a pill and nature is like there. Like you're not it's like like you don't really need, just like you said with vitamins, if you're eating correctly, you don't need to take a load of vitamins if your diet has the vitamins that you need in the actual food you're eating. It's the same thing. Like you don't need all these devices and biohacking if you're in actual nature that's
Yeah.
giving you these benefits. But like you said, there's a time and place for them. But I think people have gone way overboard on one side.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
want to ask you, Isabel, I know you got something to say too. I guess the last piece I wanted to ask for now was, I think that like what you're saying about like there's a biorhythm in nature. There's there's an ability to like, I think it's important to use nature to go outside of our comfort zone. Like we are at 68 degrees indoors all the time. The average person's spending like all their time inside. I
Yeah.
mean, we have chronic disease and chronic immunodeficiency. We have all these, autoimmune disorders that are based
Yes.
in high level sensitivities because we're not exposing our skin, our body, our eyes to the elements and to nature and to, finding our edge more. I think that really, really is essential and part of, we're all becoming indoor cats, and it's not good.
It's funny you say that, Isaiah. Whenever I get into sort of confrontations energetically with these types of people, these urban people, which happens often, and that's a whole nother thing to talk about. But I always say to them, "Welcome to the outside." Like whether it be on a trail, if I'm on my bike and they don't know how to move over, or whether I'm very efficient with my driving because I'm aware, and they're sort of like brake checking and going left and then right, and they're not really making decisive decisions due to their, I believe, a lifetime of being urban and sort of softer. I'm always just like, instead of getting really mad, I just smile and I go, "Welcome to the outside." Like, you can tell that it's like their first time like out in like a nature functioning where you have to be aware and make quick decisions, but also be kind of flowy with it. Like, you could just see that they're not used to it.
Yeah.
And usually it's on weekends and these sort of, you know the deal. But
That's a
I love
nice
saying
way
that.
to
I'm like,
check them. Very
yeah,
polite way to
I'm
check
just like,
people.
welcome to the outside. Like, please move, get out of my way. I'm always out here.
You know
Yeah.
what? One of the things that I teach or I talk about is when you have an environment and you then take that environment and you apply certain words to it or certain thoughts to it to amplify it. I had taught a class recently, and it happened to be a really rainy day. And I was thinking about, like, rain and its energy of releasing and washing away and cleansing and all of those aspects that go with rain. And you don't have to stand in the rain, right? You can just imagine the rain,
Yeah.
look through and feel those energies. So when you're going through all of these experiences that you go through, do you apply thought to it? Do you amplify it with thought and energy, or do
Oh,
you just
absolutely.
experience it in its natural form?
Well, that's so interesting you asked that, Isabel, because because people, the first thing they'll ask me, especially people who are on the path of spirituality or enlightenment, or they'll try to relate with me right away and go, "Do you meditate?" And the
Mhm.
first thing that comes to my head when I'm asked that is, I'm always like, "Why would I sit inside and meditate when I can walk into ancient redwoods that I call microphones to the universe because they're rooted in the earth and they're so old? Why would I sit with my legs crossed and like close my eyes and meditate when I could go touch a tree and intentionally try to transfer my thoughts to that tree?" So for me,
Yes.
yeah. So it's interesting you asked that because I have this conversation a lot with people. My form of being in thought and sort of meditation is being alone in areas that I find that are extremely beautiful. I try to find the most beautiful sort of magnetic area wherever I am. For example, when I'm up in West Marin where Isaiah is, I spend a little bit of time up there, and I'll go up there and I have this spot that you have to walk for 40 seconds on roots of this old growth redwood family. There's
Yeah.
five
Yeah.
trees together. So
Hmm.
they're a family, and it's the only family in this whole redwood grove. And their roots span out along this river. It's a big creek, but I call it a river because it is actually pretty big and I swim in it. Um, so I take my shoes off and I walk along these exposed roots. And, I'm in my mind, I'm intentionally connecting and
Hmm.
letting that family of trees know I'm coming. And then
Hmm.
I'll get to the bottom of the tree and I always kiss it. And I
Hmm.
always put my forehead, which is sort of a Maori Polynesian practice. They connect their foreheads it's a transfer of energy.
Hmm.
And I'll put my forehead to the redwood, and then I touch it. And I
Hmm.
always either say something or, like, I like to say health, wealth, longevity, and happiness.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm putting out into the universe that I want. And then
Hmm.
I'll sit at the base of the tree. And yes, I get into sort of a deep thought of either a problem I'm having or something I want to attract to myself. Or so that's my form
That's
of,
perfect.
yeah. And I do that. I apply that to everywhere, whether it's the ocean, whether it's the redwood forest, whether I'm on top of a mountain in Iceland looking at northern lights. I'm very much always trying to be present and think
Hmm.
about deep things in those areas.
Hmm.
And I feel like that has attracted so much amazing
That's
stuff into my life, and
Yeah.
I attribute that stuff to those practices.
Yes, yes. You used the word magnetic before. Then when you use that word magnetic, I thought about, like, how you can absorb all of these things from nature into your body, just by touching and being,
Yeah.
and there is like do you find that there's a magnetic exchange within your body that actually has healing? I
Well,
mean,
and
I
that's
I think you would, but do you feel that?
I that's not even what I meant when I said the word, but 100% when you put it that way. When I said magnetic,
Yeah.
I meant there are, without a doubt, people always say beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but universally there's an agreement on what's, like turquoise water is beautiful, or a big large redwood, is more beautiful than a kind of dying smaller tree or whatever. In my opinion, there's a universal understanding of like more vibrancy, more power. So when I say magnetic, I mean areas that where you're just kind of jaw drops, where you're like, wow, this is like, there's not a, there's nothing, there's nothing blocking the beauty. There's no telephone wires. There's no
Yeah, it's like
dying trees.
untouched, no
Un,
people,
un,
right?
yeah, untouched, but also that's like, you can go into a whole forest that's untouched, but then you could find a grove or an area in that forest where you're like, whoa, this looks like a place that,
Love it.
that magic would be spun and fairies would be hanging
Mhm.
out in. And
Mhm.
it's the same
Just
thing
kind
in
of
the,
shift right out. You just
yeah,
and just shift right out
and
into
that's where I like to go and do these practices. It's also the same thing in the ocean. You can go on coastlines, and all of a sudden you find a lagoon that's more blue and clear, and there's some fish there, or whatever, and it's just more magnetic when I use that word. But
yeah,
in its terms that you're saying it, 1,000%, I feel a transfer of
yeah.
of energy, of magnetic energy in these places,
Mm.
especially when you
I'm
take your
getting
shoes
so
off.
I'm like such an energetic person, and I'm just talking to you.
Yeah.
My energy is like it's hard for me to sit still. I want to like, whoa,
Yeah,
just from
Isabel, I have a lot of people tell me that, and it's really interesting, but it can get me in trouble too. So
yeah.
it's a positive thing a lot of times, but at other times it's also I have to
Mhm.
like navigate that. But I appreciate you saying that.
Well, like, yeah,
Yeah,
imagine if you weren't immersed in nature consciously all the time, how
I'd be
amped you'd
dead.
be. You'd be crazy. You'd be a crazy
you'd
man.
be
I'd be dead.
levitating.
I'd be dead. I mean, I've never taken one medicine, and I was diagnosed when I was young with the worst case. They told my mom I had the worst case of ADHD they'd ever seen in elementary school, and they really wanted me to get on Ritalin. And for all my mom's flaws, I really appreciate that she held strong on that, and she never put me on any pharmaceutical drugs, even though she herself got hooked on pharmaceutical drugs. She never let me get into them, and
Yeah,
so I've had to over the years learn to try to harness this what you're recognizing, this energy. I've had to try to like, now I'm 40, so I've really learned how to in the best way I can sort of
manage it.
use it to the best of my ability and manage it. Yeah.
Do you have children?
No, I don't have children yet.
No,
I'm
yeah,
starting to want
yeah.
some though, I think.
Yeah, I kind of see something there.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
that'll
yeah,
be so nice for your child. It's like Isaiah with his children. He's
yeah.
so, teaches them how to walk in this particular world.
I'm looking
Um,
forward to that. Yeah,
yeah.
that's something.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I was
And
I speaking of energy and stuff too. When I first met Isaiah, I consider myself very aware and a good judge of energy. I'm constantly. That's the first thing I'm reading. I don't care what people do, what their family name is. I don't. I'm always reading them and like what their energy
yes.
is. It's very
Yeah.
important to me.
Hmm.
And when I met Isaiah, I could feel he had a very good, positive, pure energy that I could relate to, and
Yeah,
that's
he
kind of why,
does.
yeah, and
Hmm.
that's why we sort of bonded very very quickly actually when we first met. So
Yeah, he's pretty amazing person.
yes,
In just the way he treats his body is pretty
yeah,
powerful.
he's
And then he
very knowledgeable
shares.
with the
Yeah.
mechanics of the body for sure.
Yes.
He's a few times has tried to help me, and I'm very stiff and have some autoimmune issues with inflammation, and so he's yeah, we've had some interesting convos about that.
That's great. That's
Thank
great.
you, man, for saying that. I think that a lot of it comes down to being raised in nature. So I was raised on 40 acres of land, near 1 million acres of undisturbed wilderness, relatively, and that growing up without power on land, immersed in nature, is the significant difference for me personally. Like
I agree.
I'm that much closer to my soul. I'm that much closer to
Mm.
consciousness, that much closer to my own nature because of that upbringing, and
I
you
agree.
can't take it away, you know?
Well, and I recognize that in you because I've met, Nika's my good friend, and she's sort of immersed in the culture in West Marin because she started Urban Remedy, so a lot of people know her, and not in West Marin, in Marin in general. And so I've met a lot of people and guys, particularly up there, and I'm not often like connecting with them, and I'll sort of ask her after, and it's always like, yeah, they grew up sort of in the suburbs or in the urban areas, it's not. But then when I do meet a guy that's like grew up in the redwoods or from the coast of West Marin, I always right away have sort of a bond, like an unspoken like draw to each other and bond. It's interesting. So what you're saying, I believe, is very true.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just want to say I'm really inspired by what you said about ADHD because yesterday I came across something that was so powerful. It was like reframing this whole ADD, ADHD conversation. First of all, being from that it's not that they can't focus, they can't unfocus, and that they're meant to be here. It's an evolution of consciousness actually, and that it's we call it aberration, but like it presents an opportunity for these people to disrupt the systems that are the status quo and the
A
systems that
hundred
are
percent.
controlling. And so you could see it as like an aberration, but the reality is, of course, the nature would push out all these beings. They're going to bring focus to the dysfunction that we're operating on a
Yeah.
larger level as humans. So it's kind of interesting to think about that. Like, how can we cultivate these individuals to bring their genius through and really support change in the culture that we need so badly?
I really agree with that. I've been called a disruptor many times. But it's interesting to me about how I do have this innate respect for sort of primal, ancient pillars of like civilization, and I really honor those a lot. Even though I live so far outside in my life of the system and all this stuff, I really have a respect for like these sort of, I guess, stoic things that I've viewed and read about over my life and history and stuff that have kind of been ancient pillars. But at the same time, I've also been a real disruptor of sort of systems. You know, I got kicked out of school in ninth grade. I was always in trouble, like constantly in the principal's office. I don't have a diploma. I don't have a degree. You know, I was in juvenile hall a lot when I was younger. I was kind of known in my area as a bad boy. So I was always disrupting these sort of systems and questioning them and going like, you know, no, that's not efficient. I'm not going to do that in school, particularly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also have a respect for certain ones that I know to be sort of more connected to source and God and traditional, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What are some of the pillars that
Well,
you,
I believe masculinity and feminine energy is extremely important in
yeah,
societies and in the
I
world.
do too. Yeah.
And understanding them is very, very, very crucial for a functioning society. Instead of trying to disrupt them, as I was just saying, I'm a
Hmm.
disruptor, but not in that way. I
Hmm.
believe that those ways should not be disrupted and that they're important
Yeah.
Yeah.
to be honored. And
Don't water them down and try to make them the same, for
no,
example.
they don't need to be watered down at all. And I believe another pillar, even though I my whole life was an outlaw, I believe in law and order. I believe
Yeah.
it's very important for civilizations to have law and order,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
because just because someone like Isaiah and myself grew up sort of in the laws of nature with good hearts, it doesn't mean all men have that. So, like, you know, in fact, a lot of men don't have that. So you do need strong men to enforce law and order and sort of be protectors of society and civilization.
Yeah. For
Um,
structure, right? For
yeah, for
structure.
structure.
Yeah.
I 1000% believe in that.
Hmm.
Um, that's why
Beautiful, man.
that's why I don't go off so much on, I don't really brag or talk about, I have an Instagram or whatever. I don't really ever talk about that I'm an outlaw. Like, even though I don't really know other people as out of the system as I've been able to maintain myself, I don't brag about it. I'm not like, because I don't believe it's something that everyone can do. And I don't
Right.
think that it's really
That's
the
right.
right thing to, yeah, I don't think it's the right thing to promote.
What's
Yeah.
So,
your name? What does your name mean?
well,
Your name.
my name, Ceadda, Ceadda, Vic, Vik. Vik is an old Scandinavian word for water, and Ceadda is a Celtic word for protector, defender, warrior. But
Oh,
translated to modern day English, it would
uh-huh.
mean Chadwick. And I actually use that name with anything I have to do to sign or do official sort of stuff. I will use the name Chadwick,
Uh-huh.
which is a modernized name for Ceadda.
Kata. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. I like that name. It
Yeah,
suits
thank
you.
you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Hmm.
I think it's a
Yeah.
beautiful name, and it's spelled Ceadda, which
Yeah.
no one knows when they hear it. They think it's
Yeah.
like Kay or something.
Hmm.
Yeah. And one more
Well,
Right.
thing I want to say is one more thing, Isabel, I want to tell you about. I believe in family. So
Yeah.
even though I did not, it's again, it's an interesting thing because I was not exposed to that. I've been removed from family since I was a young man, like a young teenager. My dad left. He's dead now. My mom was sort of just trying to make it and survive,
Hmm.
and she wasn't strong enough to keep everything together. My sister was dysfunctional. So even though I was always spending Christmases and whatever at other people's houses that would invite me, I've always really honored and respected that. that the sacredness of family. And now a lot of my friends are having kids and they're getting married, and you would think like, oh, Ceadda, the playboy outlaw would not like that, but actually I'm the biggest fan of it. You know, I'm the biggest
Yeah.
fan of them being good husbands and being good fathers, and
Hmm.
so that's another kind of ancient institution and pillar,
Another pillar.
yeah,
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
I respect
Yeah.
and want to keep in place for the rest of
Yeah. It's so
humanity.
important because
Yeah.
it's, in this world that we live in right now, those things that exist out, that especially with nature, nature, male, female, when I think that there's a natural order. There's that word again, a natural order to things. And when you follow it, life flows. But when you try to change it, when you try to go against what is naturally been given, then that's where a lot of the constricts can happen that Isaiah comes across all the time. People holding tight to what they should be, what they are, and how to
Yeah.
figure it out, and all of these things that just kind of build up and create all this dysfunction in the body,
Well
disruption and
said.
dysfunction. Yeah.
I
And
agree.
then, yeah. What is your work? Do you work in
That's another thing. I don't have I've never really had a title or a job. I've accomplished sort of very interesting things just with my mind and connections, but I've never
You're a connector.
yeah, I'm a connector,
uh-huh.
and if that goes through, that'll really, be a big
Yeah.
help for me in my life because it's a lot of money they're talking about. And so, and
Yeah.
both sides are very happy with that way things are going. And all I've done is been on phone four-way
Hmm.
calls and just
Yeah.
introduced people and been there to make sure everything's good. And that's it.
Mhm.
So, that's an example, Isaiah, of like something that's come in my lap that I've seized as an opportunity and tried to make work.
I
Yeah,
love it.
you just connect because you're so in flow, and you're so, like, by being so open to, God and spirit world, you allow them to come in because I have found that, spirits have they don't like to work in chaos,
They do not like to
because
work in chaos.
and so, like, when you have an environment that they can flow in and out of, and it makes them very happy and they can connect and all those things, great things can happen. Because when you have a lot of chaos in your mind and you're challenged and they're like, okay, next. Because
It's so
it's hard
cool
for them
you're
to
saying this.
reach.
Yeah, I agree, and it's one of my biggest lectures. I have a few friends in my life, particularly women, who sort of who are a bit chaotic, and I've said many
Mhm.
times to them, it's very important you learn to be still, you learn
That's
to be
it.
calm, and
Yep.
the way to do that is nature. I say it over and over. I'm like, if you
Hmm.
go by yourself into nature and you just sit still and you do that
Yeah.
often and you practice that, you will invite calmness. And
Yes.
horses are another really good thing for that. If you ever spend time around horses, they have an
Yeah, I do.
amazing ability to
Yep.
to calm people and to sort
Yeah.
of get people into that place where, like you're saying, you're
Yeah.
ready to receive. And Isabel, that you saying that is so true, and it's something that I've never really able to say exactly how you said it, but I think it all the time. And you just
Hmm.
spoke what I've been thinking for. It's why I actually get really defensive and mad. I'm thinking of a one woman who was very powerful, famous woman that came into my life and helped change my life for the better when I was 33 years old. And
Uh-huh.
one of our main conversations, and she now admits to me how right I was. It's been 7 years of me hammering down on her about you need to calm down, you need to be more
Hmm.
still, stop being around people all the time, stop going to events all the time, stop being in chaos. I would call her a circle spinner. I'm like, you're a circle spinner,
Yeah.
and you spin chaos, and even animals when they're around you, they get all disturbed and stuff. And
Hmm.
so, what you said is
Yeah.
very, very important.
It's
It
so
to be,
true, right?
yes,
Yeah.
to be calm. These things, and then so when people are saying to me, "How'd you make that happen? How'd you do that?" I don't understand. I'm just thinking in my head like I can't explain it. You just got to be in the right
Yes.
frequency and
That's
Yeah.
it.
calm and
Frequency. We
clear.
talk
Yeah.
about that
So
all the
thank you for
time.
saying that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the truth. And then one of our guests just before talked about breath, and how, like, when you're, how, of course, it's the most important thing. It's how we live and how we survive, but it's so powerful. And even when, when
That's
I
the
if I
tone.
sit in nature and I just breathing, and I'll add color and words and everything, because it's just creates this magical space that you can manifest in. And I think you just walk around all day long, every day, manifesting, because you have been able to find and achieve a way to just stay in that space. And
I
that
appreciate
too
that.
is staying in it, right? We can always,
Oh, you have to stay in it.
you got to
can't
stay in it.
I can't tell you how many times I've almost been tempted to not practice it. Like, when I first came to Malibu, it's you got this big ocean in front of you, and there are mountains here, the Santa Monica Mountains, but it is so easy to just start wearing nice linens and go to Soho House and Nobu, and then all of a sudden you're in people's mansions and you're trying to, chase some famous person that you met, and it's very easy to lose touch with being connected to nature and what really matters when you're in worlds that offer, this sort of more of a human element that can distract you.
Yeah.
And so I had to wrangle with that when I first got down here and that, which is part of the reason why the first time I left, when I first went here and went to Iceland for a whole winter, because I needed to reset myself, because I spent a summer like in a Great Gatsby movie, basically. And I was like, a real life version of that. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm getting too caught up in that. I need to really, just the summer, just 4 months of it was enough to kind of rattle me and be like, I
I
need to
can
get
see
back to
why
the wild.
I can see why you and Isaiah connected, because Isaiah is like that kind of person too, where, he just attracts wherever he goes because he has this huge aura about him
Yeah.
that he works to maintain, right?
Yeah.
Isaiah, like you maintain that. That's your primary thing, is to maintain your constitution, your way,
You have to
your
work on it.
truth.
It's keeping
Yeah.
the sword sharp. You got to sharpen the sword all the time and keep it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
Isaiah also has a similar thing I have too. His chest is out, his shoulders are broad. He has,
Mm-hmm.
you can see that he is naturally a warrior. And
Yes. Yes.
when you have that, you can even go down the road of sort of being arrogant or a punk or like cocky or your chest out too much or like kind of like almost alphaing people. You can have that road to go down. And so
Yeah.
like it is constantly maintaining sort of this positive
Yeah.
radiant light. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
Yeah.
it's
that's what I
yeah.
love that about you, Ceadda. That's one of the main things that I connected with, that I really appreciate about a man who is able to be, can be hyper masculine, can be a warrior, can be super focused, can have seriously strong opinions that, piss you
Mm-hmm.
off and aggravate you. And he doesn't give a because
Yeah.
he knows what's true and he's
Yeah.
willing
Yeah.
to stand in that, but
Yeah.
also have a tone of relaxation, healing, desire for connection with
And be
others.
empathetic.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
maintain that spectrum. I think that's
Yeah.
really what I want to embody myself and that's what I connect with. That's what I really respect in
Me
men.
too, Isaiah. And I agree with you, and that's why I think we connected. And I that is the philosophy I try to maintain: being strong and having a backbone, and being able to fight
Mm-hmm.
if you have to, but also being able to be compassionate and empathetic and
Mm-hmm.
sweet. When you
Yeah.
need to be as well. So,
That's great. Okay, to move closer, I want to see what your face looks like.
oh, I'm sorry, you can't see me.
No. Okay.
On the
Thank you.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah, you were in the
yeah.
shadows. I just wanted to have a
I
memory
could
of your
try to go to
face.
more light.
No, that's okay. No, it's okay.
Okay.
I see it. I see you.
Okay.
I see you.
Thank you.
Well, you're
I
amazing,
thought
bro.
I could
I
see
really,
myself.
I love that I knew we could just get on with no topic and just go because that's just how you are and how
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can mingle. But I really appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on. It was a big deal for me, I know, because you are kind of a behind the scene public figure in the world of sorts, and you're a major connector with people. The fact that you've never said yes to a podcast in the past is really significant for me.
Oh, yes,
It
thank
means that
you.
you trust us,
Yeah.
and we appreciate you coming.
Yeah,
So
Yeah,
that's nice.
Isabella, that's true, Isabella. Just so you know, I trusted this and I did it for Isaiah. I've never said yes to a podcast before, so
Oh.
you guys popped my podcast cherry, and it was my pleasure.
thank you, man.